As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep.
Put pucks in deep.
We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
2 weeks down to the NHL season, the Calgary Flames are still proving Matt well wrong, and a hot new bombshell has entered the villa. Welcome to the Fifth Liners Hockey Podcast, Joseph Furtado, down in Louisiana, the heart of hockey country.
Oh yeah, the heart of hockey country. That is correct. It's growing down here, and it's good to see that hockey's continuing to grow, especially now two teams in the FPHL. Now the Monroe Moccasins just newly added, and you also have the Baton Rouge Zydeco. So it's great to see hockey continuing to grow and expand here.
As you mentioned, the FPHL. Tell those of us who are not familiar with the FPHL what you're doing down there, what the work is, what the league's going on the come up following the ECHL.
Well, the FPHL is the Federal Prospects Hockey League, fifth level of pro hockey in the United States. So it's considered single-A hockey, and I'm the play-by-play broadcaster for the Monroe Moccasins. So we jumped ship from two teams in Louisiana, from Baton Rouge now here to Monroe. So we just went up a few hours.
We're going to get to some women's hockey talk. Joseph, also a graduate of Arizona State University. That's where him and I met, and formerly covered the women's hockey team there. So after Matt leaves us, we'll get on to some PWHL talk and relapse to the women's hockey side. But we welcome back on Jake Swanson and Matt Leonardo. Jake, we'll start with you since everyone's sick of hearing Matt talk. What's been going on down in Cleveland?
Well, it's a little bit depression season here in Cleveland. The Guardians got bounced by the Yankees, and the Browns are the Browns. So looking forward to the hockey season. Cleveland Monsters start up their homestand on Saturday the 26th, playing Josh Dunn and the Rochester Americans. They're playing them tonight at Rochester. So we'll see how the home and home goes, but I'm excited for that one.
Matt is joining in on a conference call from his office, and we are recording here at about 8 p.m. So for those who think that their work week is hard, stop complaining. And before we let Matt talk here, Joe, I'll give you a little bit of an insight on the podcast here. We're big-time Ottawa Senators fans. We love Brady Tkachuk, and we disrespect about 90% of the things that come out of Matt's mouth. Matty, I'll see you tomorrow. What's going on in Boston for tonight on Wednesday?
Not much. Prepping for some absolute chaos this weekend. I got Ditzel coming down. We'll be boots on the ground for the Stars Bruins game tomorrow night, and then we'll be bouncing around the college hockey scene all weekend. I'm sure you'll see some social media updates there. But yeah, Joseph, excited to have you on the pod and maybe have another person finally backing up some of my statistically backed up takes that I try and bring to this show. But sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss. Most times you have a pretty good time. So if you can do the same, we should be all on the same page here.
Well, thank you guys for having me, and thank you, Case, for bringing me on.
Glad to. And before he gets too full of his tires pumped there, he aggressively came back to me on Twitter just about an hour ago as Matt thinks the Calgary Flames are going to be the worst team in history. Matt is a Sharks fan, Joseph, who is on the heels of one of the worst seasons in professional hockey history. The Flames currently holding strong on top of the standings. Matt tweets back, teams that would have made the playoffs last year if the season ended on October 23rd, 2023. The Red Wings, who Matt also likes, and they are one of the teams we'll talk about still struggling through 2 weeks. The Canadians, the Senators, who are going to make it this year, the Philadelphia Flyers, Columbus Blue Jackets, Arizona Coyotes, and Calgary Flames. But Matt, the Flames and Craig Conroy must have heard exactly what you said preseason, and they are rocking and rolling. We'll get to them in a little bit as we cover the Frozen Frenzy. What a awesome time that was. But first, some big contract news. And out of Dallas, this about a week ago now, a little bit old news, but still worth talking about. Jake Ottinger signs an 8-year, $8.25 million contract 1 week ago from Thursday as this podcast drops. Big news out of Dallas. And along with that, Igor Shesterkin rejects the biggest goaltender deal in NHL history. That was about a week before Ottinger's deal. Shesterkin declines an $88 million, $11 million AAV contract with New York and says he wants more. And it seems like New York's getting ready to prepare to have to pay that. But guys, first your thoughts on Ottinger, what that means for the Stars going forward. They lock him in at a pretty reasonable deal for the caliber goaltender he is. And then Shesterkin and what New York's going to have to prepare to pay. We all know my thoughts on paying goaltenders big value.
Yeah, I can take a first stab at the Ottinger deal, and I'll let my counterparts talk a little bit about what the Rangers are going to do. In terms of Ottinger, I think, getting a deal similar to Swayman makes a lot of sense. They're both around the same age. They both came up through the college hockey farm system. Swayman over at Maine and Ottinger over at BU, both Hockey East goaltenders there. And I think this makes a lot of sense for the longevity of the Stars, right? Like, I think locking down the goaltender position, and as the cap continues to go up, that percentage of the cap is going to be smaller and smaller. If you project forward, I think Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin will be off the books in the next 2 years. Those are both $8 to $9 million deals that you'll get back. But at the same time, you're going to have to pay both Wyatt Johnson and Jason Robertson. So I think getting Ottinger at a deal below 9 and kind of that same value as Swayman just makes a lot of sense for the team.
Joseph, the Shesterkin deal is going to break records either way, but $88 million, not enough for him. For the Rangers, your thoughts on what that's going to mean is they're probably going to have to pay him upwards of 12.5, maybe even nearing 13.
Yeah, Casey, just like you said, you sound like you really like your goaltenders, and you know what, playing hockey, being a goalie myself, you know what, I'm with you on that. They're going to have to pay the guy. At some points, the goaltending is one of the hardest positions, right? In hockey, in today's game in the NHL, you need to have a good goaltender. Just look at Pittsburgh. Look at the problem they have. Really good offense. I believe through right now they're like fourth place for most goals for in the NHL, but their goaltending has been such a problem. They're ranked 32nd in the NHL. So again, you need to have a good goaltender, and I'm full for Igor Shesterkin getting that contract that he wants because he's earned it.
Jake, on the side of that, you pay the guy $12.5 million. It's tough to build much more offense around that. Where do you stand?
I think New York has done a really good job of managing a lot of high-paid talent over the last couple of years. You look at some of the people they brought in. They brought in Patrick Kane at the deadline a couple of years ago, and the guys, their core guys in like a Zibanejad. And I think they're going to get it done, and they're going to attract people, the right kind of hockey players to play in New York because of just the market. That's a city you want to play in. You want to play in Madison Square Garden. And if you have to take a little bit less to do that, I think if you have one of the best goalies in the world that help you out on your back end, and you're like, should I take $1 million less and have him as my number one goaltender, or go somewhere else and have not as good as on defenders? So I think it's just they got to attract the right free agents in the next season if this is going to pan out. But, I agree with Joseph. You got to pay the guy. He's not going to accept anything less than the best. And New York, you better open your pocketbooks because this guy is coming for all of it.
Certainly can expect a lot of movement there. Trouba probably on his way out, and likely quite a few free agents, as Jake mentioned, that they're going to have to bring in. Something to keep an eye on is Shesterkin's contract. He's got all the poker chips. Jonathan Quick's retiring, and they don't have anybody coming up in their goaltending system. Tuesday was the ESPN-led Frozen Frenzy, where all 32 NHL teams played in 16 matchups, all differing increments of start times, and there was some sort of hockey going on at all times, which meant the dent in my couch got much deeper from me sitting there for hours straight. It was a night of massive upsets. The Minnesota Wild started it off routing the Panthers 5-1 in Florida, and Paul Maurice celebrates signing his new contract extension by getting blown away at home, and the quote was something along the lines of, "I hope the ink has dried on that contract." One of my favorite coaches to listen to in press conferences. But Tampa Bay goes out and wins 8-5 over New Jersey. on the second leg of a back-to-back after a disappointing loss in Toronto, where Jersey was heavily favored there. Not sure if you guys saw the goal that went in on Jake Allen, definitely October style, and spooked by a ghost that the puck hits off the stanchion and takes a 90-degree bounce into the empty net as he was headed towards the corner to play it. Dallas loses 4-2 to Buffalo, and Columbus beats Toronto 6-2. The Leafs were the other team on the back-to-back after playing Tampa. But some crazy scores. I'll add in the Ottawa Senators continue to steamroll their opposition in perfect timing to get in character here. The Go Sens Go, and Utah on the wrong end of a 4-0 loss out there. But out of any of those big upsets, which stand out to you guys? Matt, we'll start with you.
Man, Casey's lovers going at each other has got to be tough for him to watch. I think he's just going to go with the winner in that point. The team I want to talk about is Minnesota, because I think you're really starting to see kind of this culture built around Minnesota, and you kind of see it through their social media. They do a great job kind of showing like a lot of the personalities in that locker room, whether it be a guy like Jake Middleton or Marcus Foligno, just bringing good energy to that locker room. They've really brought in a winning culture, and I find it hard to believe that if we look at this team 2-3 years from now, when they're not paying off the Parise and Suter contracts, that they're not going to be a contender year in and year out, right? As long as they can lock up Kaprizov to a long-term deal, because he is one of, if not the best goal scorers in the NHL at the current moment. So if they can get that locked up, they've got an unbelievable back end that has really been strong in that top four, right? Like if we look at Spurgeon, Faber, Brody, like that three right there is an unbelievable group. And then you get the firepower up front from guys like Matthew Boldy and Max Zuccarello and Kirill Kaprizov, like I mentioned before. I think this team is legit this year. You know, Florida's obviously been a little bit of up and down, but every game that Minnesota's played has been competitive, and you can tell that they're just fighting to win games. And when you do that early on in the season, you have some concerns that might not be able to last. But I think if they can stay the course and continue to play hard-nosed hockey and kind of build off that culture, that I think Minnesota is definitely a legit team this year.
Not to mention that, as the politicians would say, they have millions and millions and millions of cap space coming their way. Joseph, how about you? What stood out of the Frozen Frenzy?
Oh, I mean, if I'm looking at a team, I mean, I know they lost. You mentioned them; they lost 4-0 to your Senators, okay? But they just been a team that surprised me so far, being from Arizona, right? Down the street at the Cronkite School with the Coyotes played. I mean, they've just been very surprised in the way they've come out and having a positive record so far. I know they lost 4-0 in that game yesterday, but just looking overall as a whole, I mean, Utah has been quite surprising because I did not have them coming out starting like this at a 4-2 record. But, from just the other day, I mean, yeah, I'm going to have to roll with Utah on that one.
We got Utah very high as well. Matt mentioned the lovers' quarrel. Maybe the two teams I've been backing the hardest outside of my top-notch Carolina Hurricanes. Jake, where were you on the Frozen Frenzy? Your Columbus Blue Jackets state mates there with a big rout of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go, Casey. And I've been surprised by Columbus a little bit just because I expected them to have a lot rougher start to the season. And going up against some top contenders in both conferences besides, outside of the Sabres, all of their games have been in perennial contenders in the Wild, the Avalanche, and the Leafs. And then they've got the Predators tomorrow as well. Or actually this weekend. Sorry, I can't read dates. But it's just interesting to me how they do it with a lot of guys that are two-way guys in the AHL. I'm looking at the stat sheet, and I'm seeing a lot of guys that were in Cleveland last year. Someone that tops the list is Jake Christensen, who had an assist last night. But it's interesting to see if they're going to be that kind of middling team again, or if they're going to drop back down to where they were last year. And I'm kind of hoping that they get up and kind of challenge for maybe a wild card spot, because that would be kind of fun to see. We haven't seen that in a couple of years here in Columbus. So
the Ottawa Senators are third place in the Atlantic. Brady Tkachuk has 8 points in 6 games, goals in 3 straight games, and the Senators are rolling. Matt hates it. I could not be more thrilled. Elsewhere in the NHL and part of the Frozen Frenzy, a couple teams that are starting to get on some hot streaks. We'll start in Nashville. The Predators get their first win of the season over the Boston Bruins last night. And after an 0-5 start, with 4 of those 5 coming on home ice, they finally win a game after allegedly winning the offseason, the disappointing start, the first time in franchise history they've ever started a season 0-3, nonetheless 0-5, now 1-5 after beating Boston. Where do you guys sit on the Nashville Predators?
Tough to count a team out this early. I'm typically around a Thanksgiving time before I really hit the panic button, and even last year with Edmonton kind of turning things completely 180 after Thanksgiving, I think anything can really happen there. I think for Nashville, it's just going to be figuring out that line chemistry that actually works. You bring a bunch of guys in that are very similar play styles and have never played together. It's not going to be immediate click after 6 preseason games. You're ready to rumble. Obviously, you don't want to give away these games early in the season, but once they kind of find that top 6 that meshes together, I think this team will be back on all cylinders.
A team that fits right in with the Predators, the Colorado Avalanche, who are starting to get things going. No team has ever won the Stanley Cup after starting a season 0-3. Both the Avalanche and the Predators fall under that category. But after for the first 5 games of the season, not leading for more than 5 minutes combined between those 5 games, now the Avalanche have strung together 3 straight wins, including an overtime win Friday against the Ducks, a win against the Celebrini-less Sharks on Sunday, and then Tuesday during the Frenzy in a win over Seattle. Joseph, for the Avalanche, is this a team that you think is going to turn around with the goaltending problems, or is this a team that you're slightly concerned about?
You know what? I mean, they got Nathan MacKinnon, so I'm not really that too much concerned about them. I mean, still early in the season, right? We're just talking about Nashville and their start, right? I would not count out the Avalanche at all right now, despite the problems, right? They're slowly starting to pick it up and get their footing under them. I know it's been a slow start to them to the season, but again, get a few overtime wins. They got some help from Nathan MacKinnon the other night with an overtime winner. And again, like I said, not a team that I'm really concerned about going down the stretch. I think they'll start to figure it out and get everything going.
Jake, for you, if you had to pick one of the 2 teams there between Nashville and Colorado, which team are you more concerned about? Which team do you have more faith to make a run towards the postseason here with 2 stacked offenses?
Yeah, I'd have to say my concern goes to Nashville a little bit more, just because, like Matt was saying, that line chemistry, when you bring in a lot of guys in over the offseason, they can have really good on-paper stats and on-paper chemistry with their teammates, but it doesn't matter until you get into that locker room and until you get onto the ice for the first time. And I think that's kind of where they're going, but it's hard to bet against Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. It really is. And just those 2 alone, we were talking in our Pacific Division episode, do these teams have that face of the franchise that can win you games on their own? And Avalanche have proved time and time again that they have 2 of those guys that can take over a game. And the goaltending, Georgiev, he just has to be good at best for this team. Jussi Saros is a heck of a goaltender for Nashville, but if he doesn't get help from his offense, and it doesn't really matter if you let in 1 or 2 goals a game, those 1 or 2 goals could lose you the game.
I'm holding on to hope on Georgiev leading the Ditsy's Dogs fantasy franchise. No one wants to trade with me. I got 4 goaltenders all picked up off the wire, and I'm looking at a 5th that just became available. But I think I would side with Nashville on I think they have a more sturdy offensive side, but a little bit stronger defense than the Avs, where they have Makar and right now an injured Taves. And I think Jussi Saros, for me, would be the difference maker versus Georgiev, who has looked like he can't catch a puck off the blind side of a barn. But it'll be interesting to watch between 2 of those teams that were touted to be top of their conference on whether or not either of them can put themselves in a playoff position. And going back to the stat that by the time you hit American Thanksgiving, teams that are over 5 points outside of the wild card race miss the postseason over 85%. And we're getting closer and closer and closer every time we sit down. Now, just about a month away until that point comes. And both of those teams are holding on to their sticks a little extra tight. Some outstanding overtime finishes to close off the late games. The first, Sebastian Aho scoring with 6 seconds left in overtime to beat the Edmonton Oilers, finishing off a 2-goal comeback. And the Canes upset the Oilers, and Edmonton, another one of those teams that's holding on for dear life right now. They've got a couple wins under their belt. I'm probably the least worried about Edmonton. And then the team of the week, the Calgary Flames, scoring in the final minute of regulation to tie the game against Pittsburgh. They then win in a shootout, making them 5-0-1, the third best team in the NHL. And on top of that, Calgary announcing this week that they are searching for a trade, looking to find a middle six center, which is not going to be an easy ask, but Craig Conroy made some great moves at the end of last year to keep this team relevant, and going even further to prove how idiotic Matt's take could be. They're trying to improve the team rather than rebuild. Matty.
What a mistake. I mean, let's look at the roster top to bottom here, right? Like, there is not a lot going on in the sense of, young, exciting talent on this roster at the moment. A lot of the guys that they're getting contributions from are, guys who you finally are expecting to show up, right? Huberdeau has had a pretty outstanding start to the year, which is about time. Nazem Kadri's looked pretty good. And for me, I'm struggling to see what they do here, right? If they go bye after 6 games of the season and they fall off to a 500 team the last 76, they're going to be in a wild card situation. And, realistically speaking, does anyone really trust Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf to carry this team in the back end for 76 more games? I mean, it's not like the blue line outstanding in front of them, right? You've got, Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson, who are really those 2 formidable guys on the right side. And other than that, on paper, this team does not really have the firepower back there to allow for a young goalie and let's face it, a backup goalie and Dan Vladar to carry your roster there. And then you look up front, they've got some guys that are overperforming at the moment. But for me, I think, Conroy is coming out there and making a statement to have this not be a fluke, right? You get hot early in the season. You don't want people to think, oh, this is just a flash in the pan, similar to what half the teams last year were at October 23rd that ended up missing the playoffs. But for me, I feel like if you're going to try and go bye, I would want to see a little more sustained consistency and kind of make that decision a little bit more towards the January, February timeframe.
You bring up the goaltending tandem there, and watching that shootout, it was abysmal between either side. And of all people to lose the game, it was Sidney Crosby hitting the post. And for the first 4 guys that shot, every single guy that put the puck on frame, the puck went in the back of the net. And there were a few that were head scratchers on what the goaltenders were doing as the puck went between them. A couple of them, it was Dustin Wolf in net for Calgary, where one of them went 5-hole and he didn't even try to go down as the puck went between him. It looked like he completely lost where the puck was. But that's, if they can get average goaltending and put up 5 goals a night, Matty, it's going to be a postseason caliber run that is going to be looking bad for your lottery take as the Buffalo Sabres come in to take that from them. But Jake, the Penguins, the other side of this conversation, that's a team that you're very down on, and they are looking bad through 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, Casey, and my heart goes out to Pittsburgh because they've been so good for so long, but you gotta understand that the end was coming a little bit, and with the aging of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, they're still bona fide top, I'd say 25, 50 players, and Crosby, he cracks my top 5, so it's hard with those players to see the success they went through with their back-to-back cup wins and Sid's just entire tenure in Pittsburgh, but they just weren't able to build enough around them the last 2 seasons. And like we mentioned earlier, the goaltending with Tristan Jarry, he just doesn't look good at all. And I really hope that Joel Blomqvist can kind of blossom into a good NHL starter, but he's a rookie, and you got to give rookies some help on the blue line. And I don't know if Pittsburgh's done that right yet.
And to jump in really quick here, the thing that's frustrating about the whole Pittsburgh situation, right? Like they've had 4 or 5 years to kind of see this end of the tunnel, and they try and build around it. It's not like Crosby, Malkin, and Letang are taking up $40 million like the Leafs core 4 are. Like Crosby's at an 8.7 consistently throughout his career. Malkin's at a $6.5 million deal. Letang's somewhere in the 7 to 8 range. There's plenty of money available to build around this team, and time again, they just fail to bring in the right guys that would mesh around Crosby and Malkin. And I think a lot of that has to do with the GM before Kyle Dubas, but I wouldn't say Dubas has been doing exceptional either in trying to turn this around and, kind of an Islander style of approach of just find ways to compete year in and year out. Like they really are just bringing in guys that they're taking chances on, throwing magic beans at. And if you throw it into the fan, it's not going to hit every time if you don't do your due diligence.
There's been 2 notable trades under the Dubas era, or signings rather, and it was Erik Karlsson, which has turned out to be a brutal signing at the number that they have to pay him, and the extension of Jarry, who is looking even worse than Georgiev and easily could be finding himself in a $5 million AHL role coming up pretty soon. But the Penguins, I've watched 3 of their games so far this year, and Chris Letang in each one of the first game I watched, it was a poor turnover on the blue line and an even worse back check, and I just assumed it was Karlsson because he always gets dragged through the mud, and being a lazy defenseman, bad defensive efforts, and whatever the media wants to say about Karlsson. So I'm going to Twitter about to tweet about what the heck is Erik Karlsson doing? And it was Letang that was the one that turned it over. And that was a bit eye-opening. And the further you watch the Penguins, Letang has been pretty poor defensively. Moving on to another team that's finding themselves in some drama. And first it was Jeremy Swayman all summer, and we've been talking about the Boston Bruins. Now some trouble on the bench. And after a turnover in the defensive zone, that Utah scored a goal in their comeback win over the Bruins on Saturday night. Video comes all over Twitter of Jim Montgomery laying into the captain, Brad Marchand, who was the culprit of the turnover. The Bruins have lost 3 of their last 4 games, including back-to-back, to finish off their road trip. And they head home today, as you listen to this podcast, Thursday night, to face the Dallas Stars, who are bouncing back off the heels of their loss in the Frozen Frenzy to the Buffalo Sabres. So 2 teams that are going to be hungry. Matt will cut you loose after this one, but I want to go to Joseph first. Joseph, you've been around the game. When the coach is getting into the captain, what does that say about the situation in Boston? And does that mean that we should be betting on the Brad Marchand goal tomorrow night?
It's tough, right? I mean, Boston's a good team. But their record 3-1. We'll see what they're going to do. Brad Marchand's a good player, right? He's the best in the NHL, but he's one of the best players, and he's a great forward. I was going to stick with him, and I'm going to go with Boston.
Yeah, go ahead, Betsy.
I was going to say, we're going there tomorrow. Who you got between the 2 of Boston and Dallas off the heels of a loss? But get in your takes on the drama in Boston first.
Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of the Behind the B series. I think I've mentioned that once or twice here on the pod, and you kind of see what kind of culture they have around there, and it really is puck possession is key. And Jim Montgomery has said this time and time again, that if you don't possess the puck, you can't get opportunities in the O-zone. And I think, being lazy with the puck like Marchand was, and, if anyone on that team is going to be able to receive that kind of criticism from the head coach, it's your captain. It makes a huge statement to the rest of the guys that we're not here to mess around. We're every puck possession matters, and I think it's going to light a fire under Marchand, and the whole team's going to kind of follow his lead by example there. Especially with some crazy fans in the stands with boots on the ground tomorrow. How do you not bet the Bruins money line? And yeah, I'm excited to see if you have as much passion for the Bruins as you did the Ottawa Senators a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, Matt, you gotta buy him a nice foam hat to add to his collection there.
I'm going with the mega chain. He's going to get the mega chain with the B on the front. They sell those over.
I got my Carolina Hurricanes one hanging on the wall on the other side over there. It was actually inspired by the last time we went to a game there, Matt. I saw that Bruins chain and had to look up if they had a Carolina one, but it's going to kill me to have to be rooting for the Bruins. I'm going to do it though. I want to sing the song when the goal gets scored there, but Matt, we'll cut you loose here. You got to get back off to corporate America, and before the listeners feel too bad for him, he's been texting me all day here trying to figure out where we're going to play 9 holes on Saturday before the broadcast. So obviously he's not working too hard out there. But
it wouldn't be corporate America if I didn't get my tee times lined up for the weekend a few days in advance, especially out here in Boston. But appreciate the time on here as always. Very fun to chat hockey, and you'll see a lot of social media stuff. I bet Ditzy will explain a little bit of what's going on this weekend. So awesome. Take care.
See you, Matt.
Moving on. Some milestones in Pittsburgh, and they come on the same night. Very cool watching the chase to 500 for Evgeny Malkin and the 1,600th career point for Sidney Crosby. Both of them come last Wednesday against the Buffalo Sabres, and in the same game, 2 celebrations for the Penguins. Jake, we'll start with you. Which stands out as the most impressive between the two marks and the legacy that both of these Hall of Fame players are going to leave with the Penguins?
It's so tough to choose. I mean, the easy answer is Crosby, and I think I'm going to stick with that. I mean, 1,600 points in a career, it's unfathomable for me, to be honest. And he's been just scoring productively for the last 20 years consistently. And, I mean, we thought he might fall off after, like, the 35-year-old mark, and no, he's just kept going. I think it's been 80-plus points for the last 5 years, and this guy is just a scoring machine, and he's been doing it since he was drafted, before he was drafted. It's so awesome to see. And Pittsburgh, I mean, you talk about Yager, you talk about Lemieux, talk about all those Pittsburgh greats. Sidney Crosby is going to go down as probably I'd say, the second most influential hockey player in hockey history, right only behind Wayne Gretzky. And it might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think he has done so much for this game, and especially in Pittsburgh.
And as a leader, but hey, don't shade on the great chase, Alex Ovechkin. Joseph, how about Malkin? You're a goalie with goaltending background. How about the same guy scoring on you 500 times?
I know, and I was about to say, is it too late to admit that I grew up a Penguins fan? You know how I got into playing hockey, but I mean, I almost tore into Pittsburgh in that earlier segment, but I was like, we're going to leave it right now. But anyways, I mean, just like Jake said, the easy answer is Sidney Crosby, but, generational talent, Sidney Crosby, 1,600 points and what he's been able to do. And then you turn and look at Evgeny Malkin, 500 career goals for him. I mean, anybody who can hit 500 goals like that, he's a scorer, and that's what he is. And, look at Evgeny Malkin when he says, I am score, right? And he is. I mean, number 2 to Ovechkin in terms of, Russian scoring. But, 22 goals, 51 assists, 73 points, and a +12 in 54 games against the Sabres, and he picked up his 500 career goal. Now, I expected a little more of a celebration from Gino, but, he just went, like pure class, straight to the bench, right? I just thought we were going to get a little more from him. But, watching Malkin grow up and playing and being one of my favorite players, and he's, great scorer, and even at his age, he can still do it against any goaltender.
Bench clearer wasn't enough for him. The Sabres and the Penguins are two teams that we can link in the same conversation we had as the Avalanche and the Predators. And the Winnipeg Jets put that one in pretty good pretty just solidified it with the big comeback they put on last Sunday as the Penguins open the scoring going up 2-0 early. They find themselves trailing 3-2 at the end of the first period. They lose the game 6-3. In the entirety of the third period, the entire arena chanting, "Where is Rutger?" Rutger McGroarty demands a trade out of Winnipeg, ends up getting traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and now is playing with Wilkes-Barre Scranton in the AHL. And the Jets fans had no shortage of sympathy as they rubbed it in. And allegedly, around the Jets locker room, there was some soreness that McGroarty was not allowed to play in that game. They were probably planning on running him through the walls, but Penguins and Sabres, two teams that had playoff aspirations, two teams that, as of right now, seem to have lottery aspirations. Joe, I'll let you go first. You can pick a team. Jake, you can take the other team here. Which teams concern you? Which teams, if not both, can turn it around going forward here?
Sorry, Casey, you broke up. Which teams did you say?
Between Pittsburgh and Buffalo.
Which team concerns me? I mean, I'm not even surprised, but I'm going to go with Pittsburgh, right? I mean, one of the oldest teams in the NHL, and it's, what they're doing right now at 3-4 right now through the first 7. And, Pittsburgh is, they got a lot of pieces all over that, they need fixing in a lot of places, especially their goaltender, between Tristan Jarry and Pittsburgh is in dire need of a lot of help. And, whether you look at from, goaltending and like you mentioned earlier with defense, Carlson, Letang, I mean, it's kind of funny though. If you look at their offense though, I mean, they're like sitting at like number 7 for most goals for in the entire NHL, but the problem's been their goals against average. And that's a team I'm looking at right now.
Jake, the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, Sabres, they got off to a rough start with that international series, and our good friend George and his Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen draft pick.
Now a Ditsy's dog.
Yeah, now a Ditsy's dog. But I don't know, man. I want the Sabres to be good, and it's so tough for any Buffalo sports team between them and the Bills. I mean, they've gone through really good times, really bad times, and I don't know where the Sabres are currently going. They have a lot of young talent, and for example, a Devin Levi, like he looks like he could be the next great goaltender in Buffalo, but you got older guys like an Alex Tuch, a Tage Thompson that can lead the scoring when they want to. It's just, I don't think it's clicking at all, and I don't know if there needs to be some kind of locker room shift or if there needs to be some kind of like free agent signing to get a fire lit under their butts, but I just don't know where they're going, and the directionlessness of this team is a little bit more concerning to me than the Penguins, because with Pittsburgh, with Malkin Crosby, you're going to get some scoring, and that team around Sid can get it done. He's almost like a LeBron James, where he just elevates everyone on the ice. And with Buffalo, I mean, maybe besides Tage Thompson, I don't really see anyone doing that. And I kind of worry for Buffalo, but hoping they'll turn it around. I think they've got some good pieces. Just, they got to find a direction.
I am concerned for both teams. I think for Buffalo, the general manager's got to be out after this year. The offseason they had, Jake, you mentioned needing free agent signings. They buy out Skinner, don't do anything about it. We talked about it all summer, and it's coming to fruition here. This team, very young still, but had the opportunity, had the cap space, didn't do anything with it. And I want to start a new segment here that maybe we could do going through the next month. Bring on a fan base of certain teams and bring on disgruntled fans to give their takes. I think we have plenty of disgruntled teams that would be prime candidates. The Buffalo Sabres are just a kicking point every single season, it seems like. Going back to the Sunday Jets-Penguins game, the Winnipeg Jets with the win against the Penguins, became the last undefeated team to make it through 5 games. They end up beating the Blues on Tuesday. They are now 6-0-0, still undefeated, the only team in professional sports up until the start of the NBA to stay undefeated to this point, and just continue to prove me wrong. I had them missing the playoffs, and week after week, we're going to have to continue apologizing to the Winnipeg Jets, who have had the offense going after during our draft special, I said that it was a team I had no desire to watch because of the lack of offense. That has completely changed this season. So snaps out to the Winnipeg Jets, and snaps out to Minnesota's Philip Gustafson, who recorded the 15th goalie goal in NHL history, the second power play goal ever scored by a goalie in their win over the Blues. It is now the 3rd straight season that a goalie goal has been scored, and nobody on the bench was more excited than Marc-Andre Fleury, who told him to go for it, allegedly, during the TV timeout, and Philip Gustafson made the skate down the bench, handing out handshakes, which is my go-to move every time in beer league I put a muffin through the back of the net. Joseph, how about you? You ever have a goalie goal back in the day?
No. All right, that's too hard to shoot that puck 200 feet down like that, And I mean, it's always fun to see the goalie goal. I believe the last person it was Tristan Jarry with the Penguins, right, against the Lightning. And what's one of the funnier things that you never see the goaltenders go down the line when they score, but this time seeing them go down the line with that goal, that was pretty cool. But Marc-Andre Fleury, I mean, Flower, he just seems like a great guy in general, right? What he does, the pranks he pulls, and just the support he shows to his teammates, and like saying, to shoot that puck down the ice and go for the goal. I mean, it's awesome to see. And Flower, with heck of a personality, he's one of the funniest players. They're going to miss him when he retires in the NHL after the season.
The 3rd straight year that a goalie goal has been scored, and the 15th ever in the NHL, just the 18th in worldwide professional hockey. What is making the goalie goal such a relevant thing in hockey these days?
You asking me that or Jake?
Yeah, I do have a take on it, and I think it's just because goalies are so isolated back there that a lot of spotlight gets put on them for defensive awareness, and when you see them kind of have that IQ to get that puck out, go outside of the crease and play pucks. I mean, we saw it all the time in college hockey, Casey. I mean, one of the Clarkson goaltenders, Ethan Hyder, was notorious for going out there and playing pucks way outside of the crease. And we get that a lot in the NHL. So when you see it happen, it's just like, oh, like this guy is still an athlete and he can still do all of these amazing things that the skaters are doing. And I think that's part of it. And also just coming as from a baseball catcher, the guy who wears all the gear, it's kind of hard to miss when a guy with all the gear on and all that spotlight on him goes for a 200-foot shot. It's pretty sick to watch, but I really hope we get some more, and I'm banking on another one this year. I think it's going to happen 2 times in one season.
They got the first one out early. Joseph, the stick handling is becoming a much more practiced thing, it seems like, with goalies playing the puck. Is that something you were out there practicing?
I was, well, you know what? I didn't play goalie too long. I moved to forward at some point, but it's best believe, being a lot around, a lot of goaltenders, it's in the back of their mind. They're thinking about it. If they ever get that chance, they're going to take it. In a 200 by 85-foot game, you're shooting at a small 4x6 right with that puck, and you got to launch that puck all the way down. I mean, the fans want to see that, right? Because it's exciting. It doesn't happen all the time. And, when those goaltenders, they pull it off and they just turn and let it go all the way down the length of the ice. I mean, it's really cool to see, and it's awesome to see those goaltenders score.
Close off our headline segment with a moment of celebration that happened last week. And again, one that is a little bit outdated. It happened the day after our last recording, but the ceremony for Johnny Gaudreau on the Columbus Blue Jackets opening night, an awesome moment. And instead of the moment of silence, they go with the moment of celebration. The roar of applause that came from Nationwide Arena. A couple of awesome pictures that came out where the banner, as they retire his number, going up and his kids pointing up to it. And right after Sean Monahan, one of his best friends from Calgary, scored his own goal during that game, he did the exact same in a couple of iconic pictures that will go down in hockey history after such a terrible tragedy turned into a memorable night for all of the fans that were there to honor him. What were some of the biggest things that you guys got out of that, the biggest takeaways and stories that we've heard honoring Johnny Hockey?
I think, I don't know, it was just kind of surreal for me, just because, again, the Columbus only 2 hours down the road now from me, and a lot of Blue Jackets fans in the area, and it just was really cool to see that. I think I saw like some of the videos he took for promo when he signed first with the Blue Jackets after leaving Calgary, and just the love he had for like the small community in Columbus. It's not a huge city. It's not a big market like in New York or a Boston. And he was just like, yeah, this is where I want to be. And these are the people that I want to be with. And just that kind of mentality where he didn't really care so much about the accolades, about the money. Of course, he wanted to win, and he wanted Columbus to win with him. But it was very just like a humbling experience to see that, like, hey, this guy knew what he wanted. He knew that he wanted to play the right style of hockey, and he didn't really care as long as the team was a good fit and the guys were a good fit. And I think that's something that a lot of young hockey players should look up to, and I think they will for a lot more generations to come.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really cool things is being in the hockey community, just seeing everybody come together like that, and showing their respect and their support to the Gaudreau family, and just also the NHL as well. I mean, you had a lot of people joining in on this, showing their respects and paying their respects to both the Gaudreau brothers and their family for what happened. And Johnny Gaudreau, I mean, he was an awesome player in the NHL. I mean, and being one of the smaller players too at 5'9", to be able to do what he did and, have the success he did at the National Hockey League. And, it was really cool. And it's really disheartening to hear, the tragic news that happened when, I first heard it. And I honestly couldn't believe it when I first heard it. But just to see the way that the hockey community rallied around the Gaudreau family, and it was really awesome to see that. And like I said, the hockey community is just so tight, no matter where you're from. I mean, people who love hockey, they're going to support you, and to see that that support for the Gaudreau family was awesome.
And the hockey community so well knit, and what a way to prove that, and the amazing stories in such a terrible thing that came out of celebrating Johnny Gaudreau, and all the friends and the teammates and the major network coverage that put out some life stories of the Gaudreau brothers. Very awesome to see, and our thoughts are still with the Gaudreau family. And how about Columbus out to a 3-3 start after pretty much just a decimating start to their season, and they've pulled some pretty big upsets here in the start, a team that could make a little bit of noise as they continue to develop their youth. And I think maybe not this year, but a few years off from potentially being a pretty tightly contested playoff bid. On to our impressed and depressed section here in week 2 of the NHL season. We'll let the new guy start. Joseph, who are you impressed with?
You know what? Like I said, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the Jets, I mean, I don't think anybody had them starting out to the record they were able to come out with so far here in the NHL to start their season, being undefeated so far, 6-0, 12 points, and 27 goals and only 10 against, and a plus 17 goal differential. I mean, they were really surprising me. I didn't even have them making the playoffs entering this year, but here they are at the top of the list. And also pair with that, in the Calgary Flames, I mean, 5-0 too. 11 points. They have the one overtime loss, but also, 24 goals. Their offense really starting to come around here. And, we were talking about that team trying to maybe pick up a center, but right now, I mean, just look at the way their team is playing. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? It's still early in the season, but they've been impressive so far. And, just going to throw it down on the list of my third team. That was Utah. I mean, the once beloved Arizona Coyotes moving to Utah and being around the Coyotes over at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. I mean, I just didn't even have this team making the playoffs and having the start they're having right now at 4-2-1. So they've been the last team on my list there that's impressed me.
Utah was number one on my list last week, and the Coyotes team that came out of the gates last year roaring. Hopefully they can hold on. Plenty of games left, but they look awesome so far. Jake, who's impressed you so far? One team that's going to be on all three of our lists.
And I believe that's going to be Calgary. And I was very impressed with how they played. I think when we went into our Pacific Division, like kind of predictions, and all three of us had Calgary near the bottom or just missing the playoffs. I think you had them just missing, and Matt and I had them towards the bottom. And
I had them the worst, last place in the entire league.
Yeah. So I am just kind of stunned at how fast they came out of the gate, and I question whether they can kind of keep it going and whether injuries will happen. And like was mentioned earlier, if Dustin Wolf can really be that number one backstop for this team, and I mean at 23 years old, that's a tough test to backstop an NHL franchise, but I think he can do it. I think he's got the talent. He just has to get some good play in front of him. But my second team is going to be the New York Rangers. And shame George isn't here to hear me say it. But, I mean, they're averaging 5.17 goals for per game. And that's number one in the NHL over the Jets, the Lightning, and the Golden Knights. And I think their scoring is – we're talking about Shesterkin and how we're thinking about his goalie contract, and I'm thinking more of, hey, he wants to play here because he doesn't really have to do much if this offense is this hot. And, I mean, I'm really impressed with them. I think they're going to do really well in the East, and hopefully they keep that scoring up so Igor doesn't have to do too much between the pipes. And then my third, as Casey gets his hat back on, is the Ottawa Senators. I think they've been doing pretty well, and I like what I see out of them. And I'm not a huge Ottawa guy, but I can respect the culture that they built up there. And I mean, really before this season, the last I really remember of Ottawa was going down to Pittsburgh in the conference finals to Chris Kunitz, and that heck of a call. Also, if you haven't heard that call of that goal, beautiful one to listen to. But I really hope that they do well, and if Brady Tkachuk can power this team to a playoff performance, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about how does Ottawa become a little bit of a playoff contender year after year. And I don't know, maybe we'll annoy Matt some more with that talk.
What a bunch of broadcast nerds here breaking down our favorite NHL goal calls of history, but certainly high on the Ottawa Senators, even though they didn't crack my list. They would be my number one honorable mention because I pumped them up last week. I'm going to go with the Winnipeg Jets as my number one. Unfortunately, the undefeated team and the team that I had missing the playoffs as well, just ranked them all off season long, and they've come out of the gates hard. So I got to snap my fingers a little bit and show some respect there. The Calgary Flames, and you guys all said it perfectly. We'll see how long it can last. The goaltending is a big concern, but if they can add a center, and Matt had an interesting take on whether or not that's the right decision, and a team that is supposed to be going into the rebuild and hopefully building towards that new stadium to be relevant when they kick rocks on the opening night there. But, man, they've looked all right. And Craig Conroy's a built-in winner, Clarkson hockey guy, and not going to go down easy. So we'll see if they can stay relevant. Calgary's number 2 for me. And the Washington Capitals, number 3, another team that has put themselves in the top 50% early so far. But not only that, after last year where a lot due to injury, but they were a team without much star power other than the very slow Alexander Ovechkin. They've really bolstered that lineup, and they look like a team that's going to be tough to beat night in and night out. So the Washington Capitals top off my list of impressions. On the less positive side, the depressed, Joseph, who are you looking at as teams that you are not happy with through 2 weeks?
Well, we're gonna go through with the Edmonton Oilers. You make it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, and now you're 2-4-1 here to start the season. So, a tough time in Edmonton right now with the way they're handling things. Since, like I said, to go from making the Stanley Cup Finals now coming out 2-4-1, 14 goals for them, giving up 27 against, and a -13. So Edmonton's gonna have to try to figure it out here as they continue to close out October here. But moving on, depressed, I'm going to continue to go with the Penguins. I mean, we talked about them earlier, and so one of the older teams in the NHL, just behind the Edmonton Oilers, another team that's just not playing good hockey right now, and especially when you have a team or guys like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on your line, or on your team. I mean, losing games like this and blowing leads late to the Calgary Flames. It's tough. And finally, to wrap me up here, Casey, we're going to pick on your team a little bit, your favorite team here.
This one baffles
that
me.
Is that is the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, I expected them to, be one of those teams who are like the Jets, right? Just 6-0, and so, nope, they're right now what they're sitting at in their record in the Eastern Conference. At 3-2, middle of the pack in the Metropolitan Division, but I'm pretty sure a lot more people had them, to be a lot higher on that list in the division.
I almost had the Hurricanes on my impress list, which is funny enough, the team that is above 500 at 3-2 out of any team he could have come up with. For me, it's the turnover that they had this offseason. I think it was going to be expected they were going to come out a little slow out of the gates, so I'm not hitting the panic alarm yet. And they are currently on I think it's 8-game road trip it's 7 or 8 of the next 13 days. They have road games out to the West Coast. So if they can get back to home ice at or above 500 as a Hurricane fan, I will be pleased. Jake, how about you? Who's depressing you so far?
Joseph kind of already said it, but Pittsburgh, I mean, they got to figure out that goaltending. Tristan Jarry, he's got to figure it out. Or if it's going to be Nedeljkovic with Blomqvist, you gotta figure it out early, and I think that's what they're trying to do now. They gave Blomqvist a couple of starts, and he's looked pretty good. I like what I see out of him. I don't know if he's ready to go the full 82 games, but if it's him and Nedeljkovic, I'm okay with that tandem. They just got to figure it out, and they got to communicate that to the team as well. Depressed again for me, the Predators. We talked all about that offseason and how they added so much scoring. And right now they're sitting 5th worst in the NHL in goals for per game at 2.33. Only ones in front of them are Philadelphia, the Islanders, the Oilers, and the Sharks. So that's not great company that you want to be with. And they just got to get that offense going. It's going to be the line chemistry. If Steven Stamkos can have a little bit of a rejuvenation year, I think they can definitely get some stuff done. But they got to get something going in the offensive zone. And last but not least for me is going to be the Colorado Avalanche. And surprisingly, it's going to be the special teams for me that kind of disappointed me. And PK, they're 65% right now. And that's really tough to see with that team. If you're going to be giving away 35% of your power play percentage, that's just not a good rate of success. You want to be at least to that 80% mark to have a successful season, and they just haven't shown that through 7 games played. So hoping they can turn it around. Like I said earlier, it's hard to bet against McKinnon and Makar, but they got to get out of the mud soon.
If a trade for the low-valued 78 comes into play, a guy they could really use on that penalty kill. Colorado's right up there on my list as well, and this is a team that I watched the entire Sharks game on Sunday, and the Sharks without Celebrini, not a good team. And the Colorado Avalanche looked like they were right down there with the San Jose Sharks for caliber of opponent. And when the top line of McKinnon and Rantanen and Cal McCarr are not out there, it's pretty lackluster for Colorado, and they are really missing some of those big dogs. Val Nichushkin, who knows if or when he'll be back. Got to get out of the player assistance program and got to be reinstated after that. So he's not even guaranteed to be back on the team. Landeskog could be back. He could never be back. And they're eating $30 million of cap between those guys and a couple other injuries that, that's a team that George called it and we all laughed at him. But if they can't get back in action pretty quick and get some of those guys into the lineup, it's going to be a long season in Colorado. The Nashville Predators also, for me, I'm less worried about them, but they got to get going fairly soon here. A lot of top talent. They paid a lot for those guys, and you want to see that get to work pretty quickly. But a lot of those big names, Stamkos has one goal. Marchessault has one goal, and it was kind of a fluky tip in front. And Brady Shea has a couple of points, but those big names that they brought in have to start doing more. And Nashville's got to right the ship after that 0-5 start. And then finally, the Buffalo Sabres. It's a team that a lot of people are rooting for. Everyone feels bad for Buffalo, and they cannot get it right. And just like the Colorado Avalanche that I said are great opponents for the San Jose Sharks right now, Buffalo is an even better opponent. And I think Buffalo is going to be running for the lottery if things don't turn around pretty quickly. I'm going to put my hands off the reins here and hand them over to Jake as we bring on our PWHL correspondent and highlight some women's hockey here. Jake, some big updates. The schedule has been released. The training camp rosters have been released. And for us in the ECAC, quite a few familiar faces going around.
Yeah, Casey. So PWHL season, after a couple of months of limbo there in the summer trying to figure out what was going on, we had the name drops earlier that Casey wasn't too pleased with. But we also had
actually, hang on. Before we continue, I gotta bring in Joseph first. Joseph, the PWHL names. We had a whole segment of an episode that took about a half hour where I seemed to be the only one who was outrageously disappointed by the names that came out. And Matt from corporate America thought that it was a good decision. Where do you stand on the names of the PWHL teams?
The names of the PWHL teams. I mean, honestly, I haven't paid too much attention to the PWHL, so we're going to have to catch me up to speed here, on some of these team names.
We got the Toronto Scepters. We got the Boston Fleet. We got the Ottawa Charge. We got the Montreal Victoire, or I don't know how to do the French pronunciation of that one, but the New York Sirens and the Minnesota Frost are the 6.
Lackluster.
All right. I was going to say, you guys got the live reaction from me on that one. I got it. What was the team from Boston?
The Fleet.
If I had to pick, I'd probably go with them then.
Yeah, okay. That was about the consensus, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because the Fleet was around the best. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had a whole ranking system, but
since Casey, you brought it up, then what's your favorite team name?
I'm a Minnesota Frost fan. I think Boston Fleet's all right, but I hate all of them if I'm being honest. I think if you look up the logos, Joseph, I wanted like Athens Rock Lobsters. That's down in actually Joseph's the perfect guy to have here. He's in the same league as the Rock Lobsters or the Solar Bears or anything to promote the game and get people just fired up to buy merch. I'm not buying any of that merch. Jake, sorry, I totally cut you off there, but you're back to hosting.
Okay, thanks. So October 15th, they dropped that the season's going to begin November 30th. There's going to be 90 regular season games between the 6 teams, so each team is going to have an expanded 30-game schedule. So
90 games.
yeah, a lot of PWHL gonna be going on, and it starts earlier too. Last year we didn't start till December, like mid-December. So the first one, it's gonna be Toronto, Boston, November 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Our opening day also sees Ottawa take on Montreal at 5 p.m. at Place Bell in Laval. And rounding out the weekend on Sunday, New York will travel to St. Paul to take on Casey's Minnesota Frost at Xcel Energy Center. So that's at 6 p.m. Eastern. And I think it's going to be a really good opening weekend. And I'm excited that they upped the games, especially because of how much engagement they got last year. And I'm excited to see how many attendance records these girls can break this year as well. We already broke the North American record and the world record for most fans at a professional women's hockey game. So we'll see if we can keep breaking that as it goes on. So home openers for each. Again, Toronto and Montreal open up on that Saturday, November 30th. Minnesota on that Sunday. Ottawa starts their homestand on Tuesday, the 3rd of December.
Boston, I got my tickets for that one.
Yeah. Boston starts the next day, Wednesday, December 4th at Tsongas Center at UMass Lowell. And New York Sirens will not start their homestands until Wednesday, December 18th. So they're on the road the first 2 weeks of that season, but they will be at Prudential Center in New York. So that'll be a big homestand. The Walter Cup rematch is set for that Wednesday, December 4th, Boston, Minnesota. Minnesota took home the first ever Walter Cup for the PWHL, and it was a really good series. I don't know if either of you got a chance to see any of it, but it was very back and forth. I was very impressed with both goaltenders especially, and I'm hoping that it'll be a similar tilt at that rematch. But let's talk a little bit about the training camp rosters, which I'm really excited for. And Casey, like you alluded, there's a lot of familiar names for anyone that's followed college hockey. And we'll start off with Casey's Minnesota Frost. And the first two that show up for us are, of course, Brooke McQuigg and Dominic Petrie, Clarkson Golden Knights. Petrie, formerly of Harvard as well, but both were drafted in the 4th and 5th rounds, respectively. Some more ECAC in there, and Caitlin O'Donohoe from Colgate. She was a training camp invite, so possibly an undrafted free agent signing, as well as Mae Batherson, a draft pick in the 6th round, the 33rd overall pick, and their headline draft pick in Claire Thompson, the 3rd pick overall in that draft. And then some notable ones for me, Lucy Morgan, another camp invite, the goaltender from St. Lawrence, very, very good goaltender. Interested to see what she can do in the professional stage. And then Sydney Brote, this one, a name I hadn't heard of before, but I did some research. She went to UMD. She's former PWHPA and PHF. She played in one game last year against Ottawa and was injured. So she's looking to make her return from that injured list. So, Casey, any names on there that particularly excite you besides maybe one of your good friends in Brooke McQuigg?
Yeah, definitely interesting on McQuigg and Petrie, obviously with the the hometown heart there. But I'm interested to see what McQuigg could do, because especially in a 3rd, 4th line role, I think she'd be perfect for that hard hitting style that they play. She's been out in Sweden during the offseason. Her Darcy Lappin and Alexi Gay from the Clarkson team are playing out near Stockholm in the Swedish league, trying to get ready. Brooke's coming back next month, so interested to see where she can go. And a big physical player, the all-time program leader in penalty minutes at Clarkson University, taking over assistant coach Cassidy Winkle's reign at that mark. O'Donohoe, I think, is another great add. And obviously Claire Thompson, their 1st-round draft pick, see what she can bring. I think that'll be a big offensive add for this Minnesota team that's already a offensive force.
Yeah, And Joseph, I don't know how much you've gotten into the women's hockey scene, but do you know any thoughts on Minnesota, if you have any? And if not, do you got any vibes about the team just based on their name?
You know what? They got a cool logo as I bring up the logos now that you mentioned, so we'll go with that. But you know what? I guess I'm gonna rock with Boston the Steel because they got Hillary Knight on that team, do they not?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So yeah, she was from Palo Alto, so not too far from where I grew up. So I guess I'm gonna root for her and them.
Cool. So
and go against
Joseph,
any team Casey picks.
Yeah, Joseph, confirmed Boston Fleet fan, who will throw up next as we look at the training camp invites. So first for me, looking at this, of course, you got their 4th overall draft pick in Hannah Bilka from the Ohio State University. Very good player.
I say we had to get the Ohio
State
University.
It's kind of a crime if I live in Ohio and I don't say it. So
I'm going to force the green and gold sweater off Jake right now.
Oh, man. But I think that's going to be a really good signing for them. Hopefully she can do some great things here in Boston. Interesting one for me, a 7th-round draft pick towards the end of the draft, Ilona Markova. She's a Russian, and she was going to compete in the 2021 IIHF Women's World Championship, and she was selected by the coaches as one of the top 3 players. She was going to play at the 22 Winter Olympics, but a positive COVID test derailed that. So she's looking to come back. She's been playing professionally in Russia the last 2 years, and then was drafted in the 7th round. So going to see what she can do over here in North America. But that's a good name to keep an eye on. In the ECAC worlds, we've got Sydney Bard as well as Danielle Serdachny, 2 very familiar names again to us. Bard, a defender from Colgate, and Serdachny, her teammate, the 2nd overall pick, and someone Casey and I saw a lot of at our time at Clarkson. She was
her
nuisance.
Score a lot of goals.
Yeah, a nuisance against the Golden Knights. Very physical, very good in the face-off dot, and very good on the power play.
Anyone from Clarkson, Casey, it probably knows them, by heart. He'd tell you every player from that's come out of Clarkson.
Oh,
Jake's right up there with me.
Yeah, don't worry. That's why I'm here too.
You're outmanned, you Sun Devil, right now.
I should have transferred. I should have went to Clarkson.
Oh yeah, right. You should have followed Jack Judson, man. He had a hell of a time. Let's see other notable names on here. Sam Isbell. Now this one is an interesting one for me. So Isbell's been around pro hockey for a little bit, but what interested me is last season she actually changed from a forward to a D. And she's done this once before in the early days of her collegiate career at Mercyhurst, but as well as her first year, I believe, in the PHF. She was needed for a little bit of versatility. Ottawa had some injuries last year when she was with them. And I think that she's slated as a defender this year as well. So interested to see how that one turns out. But a very good player. Also played, in the PHF. So has some more professional experience. Let's see. Another Golden Knight and Stephanie Markowski, another one of Casey's good friends from that class, drafted 1 pick ahead of Brooke McQuigg there, and won a national championship with the Buckeyes last season. And last but not least, the 2 goalies that stand out for me on this training camp invite are Logan Angers and Gwyneth Phillips. Angers from Quinnipiac, very, very good goaltender for the Bobcats in her 4 years there. And Gwyneth Phillips from Northeastern was up there for one of the best goaltenders in the nation, was nominated for the Best Goaltender Award, I believe, 2 years in a row. And so Boston has some depth in between the pipes this year. And I think, that's Ottawa. That's what I'm saying. Oops. I think I got my stuff mixed up, but that's that's from Ottawa. Boston as well with Sydney Bard, I think, is going to be very good. But in between those 2 teams, Casey, between Boston and Ottawa, do you think there's any more significant signings. I'm leaning towards Ottawa just because of Serdachny and Markowski and Isbell. But do you see anything on that Boston side that makes you go a little bit towards them?
Boston really blew it at the end of the draft where they lost Amanda Kessler and Montreal signed her and then wouldn't trade her. So she ends up retiring because she only wanted to play for Boston. That was a really interesting one. But I think Ottawa is going to be a lot better. Danielle Serdachny obviously is one of the best players coming out of college, a Patty Kaz top 3 for the past 3 years. And I got to shout out Stephanie Markowski. She was at the game last night watching my Carolina Hurricanes put a rompusing on the Edmonton Oilers. She's from Edmonton. Her and Danielle were together at the game, both big Oilers fans. So looking forward to she'll be on campus in a couple of weeks here, and I think we're going to try to go up when the Oilers play the Senators, and I'll certainly have my hat on to make sure where my Canadian allegiances go. Logan Andrews is an interesting one. She's a monster, and to add some size in net, I forget the exact. I think she's 6'1". She's either 6 foot, 6'1", or 6'2", which in the women's game is quite notable. So that's a good add, along with Gwyneth Phillips, who's also been one of the top NCAA goaltenders for quite a while now.
Yeah, she is listed at 6'1", so very large presence in net. And Boston and Ottawa, very, very good invites, I'd say. Another one I forgot to mention for Boston is Klara Pezlarava. She was the Czechia goaltender in the IIHF tournament as well as the Olympics. She was named to the All-Star team in the 22 Olympics, and she had a 1.76 goals against average in the SDHL last year. So that one for Boston, I think, would be a good one to pair alongside Aaron Frankel. So going into New York, the Big Apple. So this one, there's definitely a lot of interesting names in this one. I think New York is going to be my team to watch coming in. They had a lot of stars last year, but weren't able to put it together, unfortunately. So I think their invites and their draftees are going to come up big this year. The first one, starting off the 1-1 of the 2024 draft, Sarah Fillier. Again, Team Canada star, Princeton star. She has been absolutely immaculate throughout her amateur career. So I'm excited to see what her professional career brings. Other notable names from college hockey as well: Peyton Levis, Savannah Norcross, Ellie Hartg from Yale, Kayla Vespa, used to play for St. Lawrence, Allison Simpson of Colgate, and Kaylee Osborne as well of Colgate. One big professional name that they added to the camp invite is Madison Packer, and she has brought over a decade of experience in professional hockey to this team, so I'm hoping that she makes this team and kind of anchors that forward core. So we'll see what she does, but I'm very excited to see what this New York team does. And Casey, again, ECAC taking over in this New York camp. We already saw the likes of Ella Shelton and Elizabeth Jaguar on this team, and now you add in someone like a Kaylee Osborne, who's been an outstanding goaltender for Colgate. What are you looking for out of the Sirens this year?
I think outside of the players, the addition of Coach Fargo behind the bench from Colgate, leaves to go to the PWHL, and wanting a little more family time, a little less time having to travel and recruit, so a little less job stability there, but obviously a confident move and a guy who can, if needed, to go back to the college ranks probably at any school that he wants to. But they loaded up in Colgate Raiders that are going to be going to join him. You mentioned Allison Simpson and Kaylee Osborne there. Sarah Fillier knows that play style well. They're number 1 overall draft pick. So it'll be interesting to see how he can adjust from the college game to the pros. Another team riddled with Clarkson Golden Knights there. Ella Shelton, Elizabeth Jaguar, and Shelton coming off the first ever goal in PWHL history.
Exactly. So I think New York is going to be my team to watch this year. But going into one of my favorite teams to watch is Montreal. And they didn't add as much as I thought they would going into this offseason. But I think the ones that they did add are going to help them definitely. And starting off again with some college names that we know, the pair of Buckeyes and Jennifer Gardner and Kayla Barnes drafted Barnes 1-5 and Gardner in 2-11. I think those two are going to be very good together. They already know each other. They play together for 4 years, so I think that's going to be a good tandem to have. And then again, a name that we know very well is Dara Gregg. Her brother Ridley Gregg in the NHL, but she herself at Colgate, again, has been very, very good. That Colgate team just throughout our 4 years and your 5th year as well has just been the top of the ECAC, almost no doubt about it. And Golden Knights gave them some runs, but this team has produced a lot, as you see by the draft results. So Dara Gregg, interested to see how she does. And going into the last team here in Toronto, and I think these names definitely piqued my interest when I saw who they added in their both free agency and through the drafts, just kind of recapping. And Izzy Daniel, we talked to Julia Gosling, the interview in one of the first episodes of this pod. One of our favorite names to say in college hockey. And Joseph, I kind of want to see you try and go through your play-by-play pronunciation. You think you can pronounce this one? I'll throw it in the chat for you.
All right.
And this is another Colgate Raider.
Jake, can you remember where she's from? Help him out a little bit with the pronunciation. I believe Czechia.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, because it was her and Kaltenkova, right? Yeah. Oh, Joseph's got a thinking face on.
I'm thinking, yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm going to say like New Borova. That's what I would go with. If I'm looking at it, first time off the bat. I don't know what's the pronunciation for it.
You got it.
Nemo Boyarova.
Say that again.
Nemo Boyarova. He set you up for a death march.
I would have
there.
to
You
write
no
that
chance.
down phonetically, across, and I'd be reading that at least 8 times, before we even did the game. Like I'd be saying that a bunch of times. Yeah,
we did.
And she was a top liner. She was a top liner with Kaltenkova. Put those names next to each other and say that.
Yeah,
10
that's
times
what I'm
fast.
saying. And especially they're passing the puck to each other. That's tough right there. Whoever's doing the play-by-play, they got a tough job.
That was us.
That's okay.
Oh man, that was fun. That was the road trip where Ditz and I were doing flashcards on the way up, trying to remember these names. And yeah, it was because Colgate and Cornell didn't have names on the back of their jerseys, so we had to go by numbers only. And that one was fun. But she's a very good player, very good puck distributor. Had a lot of assists at her time at Colgate. One that really highlighted for me was Daryl Watts, the Wisconsin captain and one of the best players in the nation, one of the best players I've ever seen play live in a hockey game. We went down to Northeastern to watch Clarkson take on Wisconsin that first round. It was at 2022, I believe. And I think she's going to be kind of my pick to win Rookie of the Year here in Toronto. I think she's going to translate very well to the pro game. Of course, one of our Golden Knights and Lauren Bernard from Madison, Ohio, just 30 minutes down the road from me. And rounding it out, Reagan Kirk as well, the BU alum. Again, a very accomplished coach. I believe she's grad assisting now at BU. But again, very accomplished player as well. But that kind of wraps up the training camp invites. And for me, the biggest thing is going to be the extended game schedule. How are the girls going to handle a 30-game schedule? A lot of them haven't had that many games since college. Again, the PHF and the PWHPA were very much lesser. The PWHPA was tour-based, so a lot of moving cities and playing 3 or 4 games there and then moving on. So I think the longevity, the injuries are going to be a lot more this year, a lot more in focus. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some more NCAA players that didn't get signed initially just get a look from these teams once injuries start rolling in. So be on the lookout for some free agent signings, and I think the predictions will be out soon here for my, at least, PWHL predictions for this upcoming season. But season starts as of we're recording this, in about a month. So get ready. It's going to be a fun season.
And they're looking at making that Swedish league kind of similar to an AHL. So that's another interesting one to watch. You see a lot of the NCAA players go overseas. But good work, Jake. Appreciate it. And the update on the women's hockey front. Let's close it off back on the NHL side and quickly look at some marquee matchups starting Thursday. Dallas at Boston. Maddie and I are going to be live tweeting from that one. Florida plays at the New York Rangers. Colorado at Utah. On Friday, Ottawa plays at Vegas. Saturday, Utah at LA, which is the Kings' home opener. So a tough stretch here for the hockey club. Toronto also plays at Boston on Saturday. Time to party, the Parlay Party. And we'll try to throw together a little ladder challenge for all of the listeners that have stuck with us to make some dough this week, Thursday through Monday, and we'll have our next episode coming out Monday or Tuesday of next week. We'll let Matt kick it off here. He submitted his picks. Matt's pick on Thursday. He's got the Maple Leafs in a three-way. He wants the regulation win for Toronto at home against St. Louis. Jake, what about you?
Thursday for me, I'm going the opposite. I'm going St. Louis money line against Toronto.
So you got to pick which fifth liner you go with. Most of the time, it's not Matt. So Jake wants St. Louis. Matt wants Toronto. Joseph, where are you watching on Thursday?
Oh, where am I watching? I'm going to be watching the Wild and the Lightning game. I mean, that's two. That's going to be a good game coming up on Thursday. And I got the Wild at the Lightning. I'm going to say they're going to be under 6.5 goals, but give me a goal from Nikita Kucherov.
Interesting pick. The under is one of the most painful things to root for, I've decided, as you have to root for teams to not do anything interesting. But definitely a lucrative one, especially when the line's up at 6.5. For me, I'm taking Carolina's money line against Calgary. Calgary's luck's going to have to run out at some point. Carolina looked very good in the comeback win over Edmonton. I think they're going to keep rolling at least through that game before they run out of a little bit of luck later on in the West Coast swing. Also, got to go with the game I'm at. Boston wins against Dallas. Brad Marchand, anytime point. On to Friday. Matt's pick. He wants the Oilers' money line in a win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Jake, where are you looking?
This one, I think, is going to be my weird pick of the week, and it's going to be Drake Batherson, anytime goal scorer versus the Vegas Golden Knights, but the Vegas Golden Knights take the win. I take the money line on them.
Joseph.
I'm going to be looking at the Penguins and the Oilers, and Pittsburgh struggled against the Oilers the last few games they played them, but I do have a Penguins regulation win over them.
And twice that two of the guys here have gone against the picks of Matt, and the Penguins regulation win certainly going to have much better odds than the Oilers win will. For me on Friday, I'm going to have to go the opposite. I'm backing Matt. I got the Oilers money line against the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you don't like that one, I'm going to double down with Jake. Vegas wins against Ottawa, unfortunately. Saturday night, and plenty of hockey going on. Matt has the Toronto-Boston game taking an alternate under 6.5 total goals for that one. Joseph, where are you looking Saturday?
We're going back to the Utah and the Kings, and I'm going with the money line on that one. But give me a goal from Clayton Keller, too, in that game.
Jake?
Yeah, for me, for Saturday, I'm going to go Jets money line versus Calgary. Get Calgary one of their first losses of the season, and the Jets score that first goal.
Calgary's got a tough schedule coming up. For me, I'm looking with the red-hot New York Rangers. Regulation win against Jake's Anaheim Ducks. Also like the LA Kings money line against the Utah Hockey Club. Saturday night is LA's home opener, and I think Utah is going to run into a rambunctious crowd there. LA's been on the road for 18 straight days, finally coming home for their first home game of the year. Sunday, closing out the week, Matt has the Devils three-way against the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks on a back-to-back, and Jake, they're getting dragged through the mud here by your podcast co-hosts here on their East Coast swing. Where do you go Sunday? And you're going against Matt again.
Yes, I am. And I think that Cutter Gauthier, Trevor Zegras are going to put those New Jersey Devils away. I'm taking the Ducks money line.
Joseph, how about you? Sunday night.
Oh, you know what? We got the we're going to turn our attention to the Avs, and you don't have your hat on right now for this, Casey, but they're playing the Sens, and I got the Avs money line against the Sens, and I mean, we're not betting against Nathan McKinnon, so.
Going to be a tough weekend for the Ottawa Senators. I picked against them as well. They are 0-3 by our count so far this week. Sunday for me, it's the Edmonton Oilers staying hot. They take on the Red Wings, but I think it's going to be a defensive battle in that one. I'm taking the under 6.5 total goals. And before we move on to the final day of our parlay party here, Joseph, what are your thoughts on the Anaheim Ducks' new uniforms? Jake, I'll toss a little bit of a bone. The whites look pretty good with the bright orange pads, but I was watching the game at home, and my dad goes, "Oh my goodness, who is that orange team?" I said, the Anaheim Ducks. He said, that might be the worst thing I have ever seen. Joseph, where do you stand on the new Ducks jerseys?
That's just too much orange for me. It's too much orange. I mean, they're all right. I mean, they're not the best I've seen, but they're not the worst. If I had to pick between the white one and the orange one, I'd definitely go with the white one.
We're going to be pretty good buddies here. And that's another take that Matt had, that he said those are the greatest jerseys he's ever seen. Jake is a Ducks fan, so of course he's going to like the jerseys. I think they are just absolutely abysmal, especially the orange ones. But that makes me very happy moving into Monday here, Jake. I'll let you rebuttal quick.
I just say at least we brought back the actual Mighty Duck instead of the D on the chest. That's the only saving grace for me.
Monday night, Matt picks the Panthers money line on the road in Buffalo. Remember back about a week and a half ago, 10 days, the Sabres beat up on a very sickened and injured Panthers team. So a pretty good bounce-back revenge game narrative for the Panthers Monday night in Buffalo. Joseph, where are you going Monday?
Monday I'm going to take the Knights money line against the Flames.
Jake?
I'm going to back the hometown team and go the Columbus Blue Jackets money line against the Oilers.
And I am going to trounce my own team, the Canucks money line, to beat the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina is playing a back-to-back there. They have to play Sunday night and then rally on Monday. I think that's a big advantage for the Vancouver Canucks. We'll see how that comes out. We did much better this week than we did in week one, which went south after an undefeated start to day one and then a completely defeated day two. But we'll see where week three takes us, and hopefully a little bit of new luck as we have a new take in Joseph's picks joining the podcast. Well, Joseph, you made it through episode 15 for us. You're first on the show, and you survived. Takes as we head into the weekend here.
Say that again, Casey.
I said you made it through your first episode here. What do you got going on this weekend coming up?
Oh, you know what? Like I said, we did it without Matt, though. It's very unfortunate. So we were able to get through without Matt, barely doing it on, the Wi-Fi hotspot on the phone. We made it through, though, the first show. But as for the weekend, hey, in the FPHL, my team got lucky. We got the week off. So, we're just going to watch some hockey and maybe some football too. So we don't gotta do so much. Maybe some prep too for the games next week against the Athens Rock Lobsters.
Something I forgot to mention there in extra snaps to Joseph. He's been just absolutely dueling it out with the internal Wi-Fi down there in Louisiana. Apparently, they don't teach people engineering and wireless networks down there. The guy is on his phone trying to read his notes while recording the episode here without wireless. So, extra props to Joseph for joining on the show, and not only that, but doing an excellent job.
Yeah, we made it through. Okay, believe it or not, like I said, the Google Doc is frozen right now. It's still loading, but we made it through, so we're good.
Jake, how about you? Much colder up where you are. No alligators chomping at your bits.
Yeah, no, like I said at the beginning, Monsters home opener against the Americans on Saturday night. That's going to be a big one, and it's going to be interesting to see Josh Dunn in Rochester colors instead of Monsters, but going to see if I can get his attention from the stands and tell him he's still loved here in Cleveland. But other than that, yeah, like Joseph said, nothing too much going on. Definitely going to watch some football and pray that this Yankees-Dodgers World Series gets over real quick so I don't have to watch the Yankees anymore.
And make sure to give some snaps to friend of the podcast, Josh Dunn. I'll send him a text and let him know you're going down. I have to wear the Clarkson jersey there to get his attention. A big training camp for him. Hopefully he's getting pulled up to the big leagues fairly soon. The way the Buffalo Sabres are going, they could use a pretty gritty fourth line, third line center like Dunn is. I'm heading out to Boston, going to meet up with Maddie. A lot of hockey on the docket. We got the Stars game tomorrow, heading to UMass to go test out some broadcast. We're doing a social media broadcast, which will be interesting. Jake, we'll have you join on for that. On Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be broadcasting Clarkson women's hockey from Conti Forum against Boston College through Twitter and Instagram. And via Twitter means no commercial breaks, just like the old days, buddy, on WTSC. And we're going to be bringing on some alumni to come on during the intermissions and bring on the fans as well to try to ask some questions, interact with a couple of notable national champions, and maybe a quick touch of Jake Swanson in there somewhere. But looking forward to another road trip here. That's right. But we'll be back early next week, a little bit less of a break. We had all kinds of production issues getting in the way this week, but it worked out perfectly because we were able to get Joseph into action here, and he's now part of the family. So we'll be back early next week at some point, and hopefully following up on a Boston Bruins win over the Dallas Stars. Maybe I'll have some new swagger to go along with my Ottawa Senators foam hat. But until then, this has been episode 15 of the Fifth Liners Hockey Podcast. Make sure to go follow along, like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and now Apple Music. Follow us as well on Instagram, X, and TikTok at Fifth Liners Pod, the number 5 TH Liners Pod on Instagram and TikTok at Fifth Line Pod on X. Till next time, have a good one, everybody.